All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Kara. I am the Director of Communications with the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency. Today, the SPSA will provide an overview of the wildfires in the province and an update on the ongoing recovery process. First, we are going to hear from Steve Roberts, the Vice President of Operations. He's going to provide a wildfire update as well as a fires of note update. And then we're going to hear from Marlo Pritchard, who's going to provide a response and recovery update. We have a stop at 2 o'clock today, so we are going to ask again for people to ask one question, and then if we have time remaining at the end, we will go to follow-ups. And just to let you know that we are recording this video as always, and it will be up on Facebook and YouTube shortly after this call. So with that, I will turn it over to Steve to begin the update.
If we let everybody in from the lobby?
Yep, you should be good to go.
Okay, good afternoon. Wildfire update for 1330 hours. We have currently 64 active fires, which is a large increase since last week. The storms that brought the cooler, wetter weather also brought significant lightning with them. And as that area dried out, we have started to pick up more fires, primarily on the western half of the province. So 64 active fires, that brings us to 327 so far this year. Our 5-year average is 185. So in addition to those, the fires of note that we still have on our books, the Shoe Fire by Lower Fishing Lakes, currently recorded at 554,000 hectares. Crews continue to contain that fire. The most active parts of the fire are actually in the far north near Highway 165. Other fire of note is the Pisu Fire, which is west of L'Orange. Crews also continue to do containment on that fire, and it's now listed at 185,000 hectares. Most of the active portion of that fire is actually far to the north end, away from the prime communities, population areas. So crews continue to work on that one and clean up those fire guards for containment. Wolf Fire west of Denier Beach, currently listed at 161,000 hectares. Is actually been fairly stable, no very active areas, but crews continue to work that fire to achieve containment and be wary of hotspots or flare-ups for many of those portions. The Santos Fire is a fire that was reported on June 2nd, currently listed at 20,000 hectares. It is in the proximity of Pine House, which makes it a fire of interest. Currently, crews are working on that fire, but it does have some values, 914, Highway 910, and some SAS power infrastructure. But we have support on that for crews, helicopter, and air tanker support. The Ditch Fire north of Waquin, still listed as not contained, current size 183,000 hectares. Crews, helicopter, air tanker, heavy equipment supporting this fire. And again, most of the fire activity tends to be in the far north, in sort of the vicinity of Highway 165. The southern portions have been fairly well secured, but work will continue till we can achieve containment on that fire as well. Of the new fires that we got over the weekend here, the one of most note is the Muskeg Fire, which is north of La Plonge Indian Reserve and the community of Beauval. Current size listed at over 8,000 hectares. We have firefighting crews, helicopter support, air tanker support, and heavy equipment on that fire. We are seeing the closures of Highway 918 and 165 due to the proximity of that fire. And we currently have evacuations listed, and Marlo will cover some of those evacuations that this fire has triggered, and we'll get into that. But again, we have crews on this fire as well. And to add to the number of fires and the increasing risk, we have brought in a pair of water bombing aircraft from Quebec to assist us on top of our own fleet. And we're also still looking at bringing crews in from other parts of the Canada and other jurisdictions. And the last note is currently we have 93 Type 3 firefighters assisting us in our efforts.
Thanks, Steve. Marlo, we'll go to you now for the response and recovery update.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Kara. Good afternoon, everyone. Just quickly bring you up to an overview of our evacuation situation as we speak. Currently, we have the Bear Creek Resort Subdivision that has declared an evacuation, and approximately 45 individuals did evacuate. 18 are being supported by SPSA, while the remainder went to family and friends. We have the Lac La Planche subdivision was also evacuated. Most of those are cabins, and so they just left the community and are not being supported by SPSA. La Planche First Nation also evacuated, and they're being supported by MLTC, and approximately 140 individuals have left that community. We continue to support 2 individuals from East Trout Lake, and we continue to support about 15 individuals from the Denair and Creighton areas. We also are aware that there's other communities in the area that are currently considering evacuations, and they're monitoring the situation. We are reminding residents that they can call 1-855-559-5502 between 8 and 5 p.m. for assistance in registering on the Saska Evac app if needed. And we also want to remind residents that are facing the increased fires or that are impacting the communities to reach out to their community leaders for the next steps in case of evacuation. Also want to talk about the financial support briefly. The government of Saskatchewan announced the $500 support payments for those impacted by the wildfire for individuals that are 18 years of age or older. I am pleased to say that over 5.1 million has been transferred directly to residents or to the communities for distribution. And SPSA is actively distributing those checks to residents this week, and we will continue to expand that activity in the coming days into next week. We also want to remind everyone to ensure that you register in the Sask Evac app, whether regardless of your repatriation status, to make sure that you're eligible and easily accessible for the $500 grant. I also want to talk briefly about the PDAP. Again, we know that many communities have been impacted by the wildfires this year. And under SPSA Provincial Disaster Assistance Program, communities may apply for further assistance during the recovery phase. This coverage may include long-term displacement assistance for individuals, as well as covering the cost of essential uninsurable losses and cleanup. Just a reminder, PDAP is not a replacement for individual insurance. SPSA has also stood up a recovery task team. The recovery task team is looking at options that can be used to provide assistance and post-disaster supports to those devastated by wildfires. This team is focused on the most severely impacted communities and those whose permanent residents were lost due to the wildfires. The current focus of the recovery task team is working with communities to support debris management, post-disaster accommodation, and of course, the mental health supports for those individuals that have been impacted. And with that, Kara, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Steve and Marlo. We can now go into questions. Before we go into questions, just want to remind everyone, we're going to start with one question, and then we will move into follow-up questions once we've gone through our first cycle. And I also want to remind everyone, please state your name and what outlet you are from before you start your question. So we'll first go with Chris V.
Yeah, Chris Vandenbrickle with Global News Saskatoon. This question's for Marlo. Marlo, are you aware of the potential legal action by Procedo Law representing Northern residents calling for some legal action in regards to the wildfire response? And what's your response to that potential legal action?
I'm not aware of any legal action at this point in time, Chris. We'll wait and see what happens in the future.
Thanks, Marlo. We'll next go to Alec S.
Hi there, this is Alec Salome with the Regina Leader Post. I'm just wondering, with this pretty dramatic increase in the number of wildfires in the province, is there any idea of bringing back a state of emergency? I know that expired a few days back. Just wondering if, in light of the increased number of wildfires in the province, if there's any need to consider bringing back a state of emergency at this time.
Thanks, Alec, for the question. At this point in time, it's like everything we monitor, the impacts on the communities, impacts on the critical infrastructure. And at this point in time, the state of emergency is not being enacted. But, like a fire ban and like everything else, those are considerations each and every day, depending on the impacts.
Thanks again. Next, we'll go to Jeremy W.
Hi, Jeremy Warren with CBC in Saskatoon. Just wondering, with some of these new fires, can you describe what's going on in the Beauval, Lac La Plonge area? And because that's a relatively new fire, correct? That's what you said?
Yes, Steve.
Yes, I'll just cover there's actually a number, and I mentioned the increase in number of fires. There's actually a large number of fires on the western side, sort of from north of Beauval down past the lake, and actually all the way to Dory Lake. So there's a number of fires. Collectively, the concern is access for people north of that. So there is some cautionary acts in place for that. But the biggest fire of that group is actually the Muskeg fire. It is in close proximity to Beauval, so they're making preparations, but that fire has led to the evacuation, as we mentioned, of the community of La Plonge, the La Plonge Indian Reserve, and also we have a fire farther north, not the same fire, that led to the evacuation of Bear Creek. So it's actually a number of fires. It's not one big fire. It's just the activity on the west side significantly increased over the weekend due to those fires. Then we came the drying trend, and we started to see those fires get up. And with the breezes that came with them, some of those fires have grown. So nowhere near the size and scope of the fires we've seen so far, but obviously enough to be a concern to those local communities.
Thanks, Steve. Next, we'll go to Jacob B.
Hi, it's Jacob Bamhauer with 980 CGME. I was just wondering, do we know what's causing these new fires? Is it the heat? Is it human caused, or do we know?
So the majority of these fires that started on the west side were a result of the storms that came through that did help the province with those big fires by bringing precipitation, but with them came thousands of lightning strikes. And now that we're seeing the drying trend behind those storms, some of those fires have lingered in the ground, in the duff, in the tree layer, and are again warming up, coming to light, being detected. And if they're large enough, they're getting warm winds and they're actually starting to grow. So we've had a number and we've been able to contain them extremely small, but not all of them. And some of them have continued to grow and either have caused a community threat or an access concern.
Thanks again, Steve. Next, we'll go to Tina M.
Hi, it's Tina from PA Now News. The NDP held a press conference this morning talking about a 5-point critical action plan that they'd like to see to help rebuild the North. That included things like, a plan to house construction workers in the rebuilding plan, or procedures for the demolition and safe disposal of waste that's been left behind at properties destroyed by wildfires and stuff. Is this not something that is already in place or should already be in place as far as emergency planning goes in general by the province? And if not, why is it not?
Marlo, do you want to start and then?
Yeah, I can. I haven't had a chance to look at the details that were announced by the NDP, but I can tell you that we have the recovery task team that's set up to work with those communities and focus on the rebuilding and supporting those communities as they do the cleanup. So that is part of, as part of response, the mitigation response, and then of course recovery. So that is absolutely part of, the planning phase. And with the recovery task team, we'll be working with those communities to identify opportunities to support those communities as they go into the cleanup.
Thanks, Marlo. Next, we'll go to Jeremy S.
Hi there, Jeremy Symes with the Canadian Press. Just wondering, when did the SPSA start supporting those from Bear Creek Resort, Lac La Plonge subdivision, and the Lac La Plonge Reserve?
Thanks, Jeremy. The vast majority of those evacuations were ordered yesterday, so we would have started in the last 24, 36 hours.
Thanks. And next we'll go to Ryan Y.
Yeah, Ryan Young with 620 CKRM. Just had an open-ended question here. I was just kind of curious. It was mentioned that there was talk about bringing in additional personnel from across Canada, and I was just kind of wondering if that includes the Canadian Armed Forces as well.
So currently, we are working with our Canadian wildfire partners, and it looks like we will be able to obtain a significant number of resources from those wildfire partners. And the reason we use those, as we've talked about before, is they're already familiar and trained in this type of business. It's not a sideline or an occasional activity for them. They come fully qualified to fight wildfire. They know what to do and how to integrate with our team. So our first wave will be getting some more staff from our Canadian partners, and then looking at our US state partners after that. And if we have to go farther, that's when we really have to ask is what are we getting for a resource? If we have to go outside the country to Mexico or Argentina, Chile, or even the Canadian Armed Forces, what do they bring to the table, and what level of firefighting skill and awareness are they going to bring? And that will be an assessment process that will be made here at the response center, and we will pick amongst what's available to bring the most qualified people into the province.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we will go to Jason Kerr, please.
Hi, Jason Kerr with the Prince Albert Daily Herald. This question is for Steve. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I'm wondering what you are expecting for the summer months here in Prince Albert. It's been a wildfire season. Do you expect that things are going to return to normal through July and August, or will we be seeing more unexpected wildfire activity?
So we're officially at the halfway point, and the first half has been, as we've known, fairly extreme. We would expect, based on the long-term forecasting, a above average, and by above average mean warmer and drier, is what's predicted for July, August for the Canadian long-term weather pattern, and which means that we will continue to have to manage these large fires, be ready proactively to deal with new fires that come up, and understand that they will be likely to be aggressive and large because of the weather pattern. So similar to what we saw in 2024 with the same type of weather pattern into July-August period.
Thanks, Steve. We'll go to Stacy H next.
Hi, Stacy Hine with CTV News here. I just have a question from my colleague. She's asking what the province plans to do before wildfire season next year to mitigate possible damage.
So we do have existing programs that exist for people to protect their own property and understand how to manage wildfire risks. We also have programs that communities can adopt to ensure that they can reduce their risk, be better prepared. And that's everything from protecting the foliage and the properties themselves to preparing an evacuation plan, an emergency plan. So those programs already exist. Ironically, if you have a busy fire season, the interest for those programs increases as well, obviously. So we will take advantage and make sure that we have information people that now are aware of the wildfire risk and do want to be proactive and take some of these choices, whether at the community level or the local level. And we will continue to leverage those programs. Some of them are provincially funded, some are shared with the federal government. And we will use those over the winter months to ensure that communities and residents in the northern part of the province will be better prepared for 2026.
Thanks, Steve. We will go to Rob O next, please.
Yeah, hi, Rob O'Flanagan from Post Media in Northeast. Can you give us an update on the values lost to these fires and some of the impacts of those losses? A lot of homes, cabins, trailers have been lost. Can you address that?
Sure, I have some breakdown of the numbers. Currently, we have confirmed 2,129 values burnt by fire. That's either completely or partially burnt by fire. And some of the breakdowns of significance is that's 299 homes, and a home is a year-round occupied structure, 125 cabins, and 312 vehicles. The rest of those numbers are, for instance, could be sheds, could be a boat trailer, could be other things like that. But those are the significant numbers. And that's from every fire anywhere in the province since fire season started. But recognizing that the bulk of those are coming out of the Denier Beach area.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Steve. I'm just going to jump over to the chat here and then we can get to some follow-ups. There's a question from Tina in the chat. She's wanting to clarify, and I'll just read it here, about the recovery task force. Is that something that was already in place or something that came together in the last couple of weeks? And if so, why wasn't something like that already established as part of emergency preparedness in the province?
Thanks for the question. The recovery aspect of it has always been part of the SPSA mandate, but the impacts to Denier Beach and others really required a wraparound all government support. So the recovery task team was part of SPSA, but bringing in experts from a number of different ministries, crowns that will really be able to bring greater support to those impacted communities and individuals.
Thanks, Marlo. And we can go to follow-ups now. Chris V.
Yeah, Chris Van Brickle with Global Saskatoon again. So, Marlo, I believe you were talking about some other communities considering evacuations. I believe Steve mentioned that access was a primary concern. Not a whole lot of roads up in that area. So if access is the concern, are there considerations for communities like La Loche, Isle Cross, those areas, Buffalo Narrows, given that there's not much road access up there?
Thanks for the question. Right now, we're aware of Beauval, that is in considering their risks and determining whether they need to evacuate. The other communities, of course, we will be having our ESOs and in contact with those community leaders. And should the risk to those access points be jeopardized, that may be a requirement in the future, but it's not being considered right now.
Thanks, Marlo. And next we'll go to Jeremy S.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm just wondering if you have a sense of the population or the number of evacuees who are out right now. Just trying to pin that down, just an estimate of how many people are out of their communities right now.
We're aware of approximately 45 individuals from Bear Creek Resort Subdivision. Lac La Planche subdivision, we understand that there is approximately 5 individuals that live there permanently, but of course there's a number of cabins which they evacuated. We do know that La Planche First Nation is being supported by MLTC, and that's approximately 140. So we're at about 200 individuals being supported by either SPSA, MLTC, or others. And again, we continue to support about 15 individuals that are out from Denair and Creighton from the earlier fire.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go to Alec S next.
Hey there. Just wondering, when last I think I was on one of these, you mentioned, yeah, it would have been on the 23rd, that with the rain coming, there was an opportunity to kind of get ahead of a few fires, go and assess things, and move some resources around. I'm wondering if you might be able to talk about some of the efforts that were achieved or realized during what was hopefully a bit of a downtime with some of the cooler, wetter weather in the north.
Sure,
we'll
I
go over
can
to
just
Steve.
mention, if we look at some of the larger fires, for instance, both the Pisu fire by Larange, the Ditch Fire, and the Shoe Fire, the biggest risks those fires presented were the southern parts of those fires because they were the biggest threat to communities. And significant work has occurred. So most of the active firework that's occurring is actually now in the northern parts of those fires because of that effort. So focused on the highest risk areas first and move on. We've also seen a couple fires as well, like the Pelican Fire that is now fully contained and listed as contained. So we will continue to see some of that activity as we make progress. But it's about not on a big fire. It's not the entire fire. There's areas that will be higher risk that will get the focus, and then we will move to areas of lower risk as we move throughout that. And as crews have come in, we've assigned them to the highest priority. So a crew may have come off and served their time, like the crews from South Dakota left over the weekend. Crews that are brought back may not necessarily fill their spots because they are no longer the highest priority. Maybe they will be assigned to, for instance, this new fire over towards Beauval. So we continually assess our priorities and make sure our crews and our equipment and our air resources are assigned accordingly.
Thanks.
All right, I don't see any new questions, and we are 1 minute short of 2 o'clock, so we will wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and this will be up on Facebook and YouTube shortly. Have a safe rest of your day.